Hi there football fans, welcome to Goalside. Before we start, don't forget to participate in our lottery for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is like this video, subscribe to our channel, and write the hidden message you'll find later in the video in the comments. Good luck! Red cards are a big part of this beautiful game. They create champions and change the course of the history of football, and the referees are at the heart of it. However, there are some red cards that stand out historically for their unique circumstances and events surrounding them. So, let's begin. Luis Suarez vs Ghana. It was the biggest event in football, the World Cup. Ghana was the proud representative of the continent, with the World Cup taking place in Africa for the first time ever, and the whole continent was behind the Ghanaians. They made an enormous impact too. Reaching the quarter-finals, they now faced South American Uruguay, as Ghana was looking to become the first African nation ever to reach the World Cup semi-finals. However, beating Uruguay was never going to be an easy feat, with the likes of Luis Suarez, Edinson Cavani, and Forlan leading the charge. Time went by, and just as the teams were preparing to end the first half goalless, Muntari scored for the whole world to celebrate Ghana taking the lead. But, just 10 minutes into the second half, the legendary Forlan tied the score, making it 1-1. Both teams were extremely cautious, not wanting to waste their opportunity to qualify to the Final Four. This resulted in the match ending 1-1 and going into the extra time. Once they got there, it was a deadlock until the faithful 120th minute. It was the final seconds before penalty shootout, and after a scramble in the box, Suarez defended the goal with his hands as if he was a goalkeeper, resulting in a penalty. Obviously, the Uruguayan striker received a red card, and Asamoah Gyan had the world at his hands at that moment. He took the ball with hundreds of millions watching on TV. Gyan lined up to take the shot and lead his nation into eternal glory. But, to everyone's shock, the ball hit the bar, bouncing away from the goal, and the match went into the penalty shootout. Ghana's morale was bottomed out, and Uruguayans won after beating their African opposition on penalties. Luis Suarez was the whole world's villain, but the only thing that mattered to him was that he was the Uruguayan hero, and nothing can change that. Josip Šimunić against Australia. We all know how red cards work. Either you get a direct expulsion, or it comes as a result of 2 yellow cards. However, there was one exception to this rule in 2006 in the World Cup. Croatia were playing Australia in the group stage of the biggest international tournament, and the stakes were extremely high. Croatia's Josip Šimunić got a little carried away, earning himself a second yellow card in that match. However, Graham Poll, the star of the show, didn't show him the red card. He simply didn't note down the first yellow for Šimunić, and the Croats acted as if nothing happened. However, Šimunić was persistent in his fouling, so he earned a third yellow card, finally getting sent off way later than he should have. It's a unique case of 3 yellow cards leading to a red, and it's probably something we won't ever see again, especially with VAR becoming an important part of the game. David Beckham in 1998. It's coming home. The words we've heard so often when the English play in the World Cup, but they haven't been fulfilled since 1966. However, there was a window of opportunity at the end of the 20th century, when England looked primed to bring the World Cup trophy back to where the football was invented, but they squandered in a rarely spectacular fashion. David Beckham was the English rising star, as Manchester United's youth product had a right foot like the country hasn't seen before. He ran the midfield at his will, which earned him a call-up for the World Cup squad. He first started off as a substitute, but a free-kick wonder goal in the group stage was the final straw that saw Beckham earn his place in the starting 11, as the knockout stage arrived where England faced Argentina. However, at one point of the match, Beckham simply lost it, after Diego Simeone fouled him in a typical Diego Simeone fashion. The English midfielder couldn't take it anymore, and so he kicked the Argentinian in the calf as the referee was approaching the duo, prompting Simeone to fall down in pain with some theatrical acting. The referee was having none of it. Beckham received a red card, and England were later knocked out of the competition after a penalty shootout. Zinedine Zidane. One of the best midfielders ever is mostly remembered for one of the most infamous red cards in the history of football. Once again, the event took place in the World Cup, this time in Germany in 2006, and Italy and France found themselves on the brink of eternal glory. They played in the World Cup final. The Italians did what Italians do best in football. They mixed hard hitters, rough fouls with artists and poetry and motion, leading them past some big obstacles to face Thierry Henry and Zidane in the final. However, nothing could separate the two sides as the match went into extra time, and the penalties were inches away. At one point, Marco Materazzi said something to Zidane, which prompted still inexplicable action from the Frenchman, who headbutted the Italian, obviously earning himself a red card. The final went to penalties, after which the French couldn't do without their captain and the best player, so the Italians won the World Cup after one of the most shocking red cards ever. Eric Cantona Kung Fu Kick. Perhaps this is the most famous aftermath of a red card. It was a rough day as Crystal Palace faced Eric Cantona's Manchester United. Palace had a long history of playing hard-nosed football at the time, and Cantona was one of the primary targets for the players on the pitch. After getting kicked for the whole first half, the Frenchman has had enough. As the second half started, he tackled Palace's Shaw, earning a direct red card without much discussion. As he was leaving the pitch, Cantona noticed a Crystal Palace fan who shouted some words at him, and he was having none of it. Nobody saw it coming. Cantona jumped into the stands and kung fu kicked the shouting fan so hard he fell to the ground immediately. Cantona knew the consequence of his actions, so he served 120 hours of community service coaching Manchester United's youth squads. Sergio Ramos against Messi. It was 2010, and Real Madrid did everything to try and stop Barcelona's golden generation from dominating Europe. Sergio Ramos captained the team, as Jose Mourinho and Cristiano Ronaldo were tasked with beating the Catalans in the 2009-2010 season. However, history has it that Barcelona completely humiliated their opposition, even though the teams were almost tied in the league table ahead of the match. The event itself saw Blaugrana completely beating down Madrid 5-0 at the Camp Nou. Messi was running the show. The Argentinian didn't score once, but managed to make all the difference in the world, completely outshadowing Cristiano Ronaldo on the other side of the pitch. However, the final minutes of the match saw Ramos lose his mind after Messi dribbled past him. Madrid's captain kicked the Argentinian with all his strength, but he didn't stop there. He pushed Carlos Puyol in the face before finally exiting the pitch. Andoni Goicoechea against Maradona. When a player earns himself a nickname, Butcher of Bilbao, you know that someone very vile is in question. It was the 80s, as Barcelona and Athletic Bilbao's rivalry was peaking. Diego Armando Maradona just joined Blaugrana in what was supposed to be a turn of history for the Catalans. However, it wasn't meant to be, due to Goicoechea, who aimed directly at Maradona, even as Bilbao were losing 3-0. Running from deep, he went into the magical Argentinian with the sole purpose of hurting him, in which he unfortunately succeeded. Maradona later said, "I just felt the impact, heard the sound, like a piece of wood cracking, and realised immediately what had happened." After this injury, Maradona was never able to make an impact in Spain, as he went to Italy in order to make himself one of the world's greatest. Ryan Shawcross. Aaron Ramsey is a player known for suffering through some of the worst injuries the football's ever seen. So, when Arsenal were about to face Stoke, everyone knew it wasn't going to be a fun afternoon for the Welsh international. Stoke had a reputation as one of the dirtiest and roughest teams in English football of the 21st century, and Ryan Shawcross was at the heart of it, commanding his defence as if it was an army rather than a footballing team. So when Shawcross went into Ramsey with a horrifying tackle, the midfielder fell down with a broken leg immediately. It was one of the worst tackles the Premier League has ever seen, and even Shawcross himself was reduced to tears after he saw what happened. Stoke's fans, however, weren't as compassionate, as they provoked Ramsey for this tackle only a year later. Shawcross was given just a 3-match ban. On the other hand, Ramsey showed great generosity when he spoke about the incident afterward. "I don't think he meant to break my leg, but it was a bit hard to take that he was playing again after a 3-match ban." Martin Taylor versus Eduardo. Once again, Arsenal's players were the target of a horrific tackle. This time, the Gunners were facing Birmingham in February of 2008, as Arsene Wenger's young squad was primed to win the Premier League with 5 points ahead of their closest competitors. Eduardo da Silva was playing in the form of his life, joining from Dinamo Zagreb, The striker played some wonderful football that season. That is, until Martin Taylor came by. Birmingham Butcher purposefully tackled Eduardo's leg, causing it to break in a second in one of the worst injuries you'll ever see. Nothing was the same after this. Arsenal lost their title hopes as Manchester United overtook them once again, and they'd never get this close ever since. Eduardo was never the player he once was too. Such an injury scare would force some to retire, but he had enough strength to keep on playing about a year later. But the brilliant striker lost his magic.